Seamus, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I am doing so well, Jillian. Great to see you.
What caught my attention, I'm just going to jump right in, was a clip I saw of you on X informing President Trump on the work you're doing to uncover who is behind some of the chaos, if not all of the chaos. I'm going to ask you all those questions on the streets. Waymo's on fire, cinder blocks getting thrown on cop cars, the same pent popped up across all college campuses. So first question is, what made you look into this? You are the guy. You have the answers. Why this? How did you get focused on it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I work with a guy, Peter Schweizer. I think you know him. He is the expert on following the money, taught me everything I know. And so we follow the money. And so when you look at these violent events, the Waymo's on fire, the anti-ICE chaos that's going on, we always wonder who's funding this. And so we followed the money all the way to the top of what we're calling the protest industrial complex, Riot Inc. And yes, of course, Antifa is part of this network. It's the boots on the ground, the paramilitary arm. But what we found is there's an entire ecosystem of NGOs and nonprofits, legal bail funds, all kinds of things that enable this chaos, things that get the protesters back onto the streets, the rioters back onto the streets as quickly as possible. We found over $100 million coming from the very top. So yes, of course, Soros and the Open Society foundations, but also other networks, lesser known names like the Tides Network, Tides Foundation, Tides Center. And then there's the Arabella funding network. Mm-hmm. They pour $79 million into what we're calling Riot Inc. And so we've got a lot more names, probably too many to list on this show.
No, I want to dig through this, period. I want to dig through it. I have tried to get to the bottom of it, but the web is so tangled. It's all of the villains from the frickin' Marvel comic book in one movie. That's literally what I feel like I'm seeing here. So let's start from the top. Okay. Foreign governments. What foreign governments are involved? How are they involved? How are they funding this? Let's start there, because I know you found links to the CCP here, right?
Yeah. So Neville Roy Singham is the most insidious actor in the protest industrial complex. Now, we're not sure that his money comes from the CCP, but we do have a number of other groups that are actually direct CCP front organizations. But just focusing on Singham for a second, Peter Schweizer really exposed him fully in his book, BloodMoney, all about how Singham has been funding things like Black Lives Matter riots, all the ones that turn violent, it would seem. The pro-Hamas demonstrations in New York after October 7th, Singham behind that. And then, of course, the more recent anti-ICE demonstrations. He's a funder of Churla and other groups that were, earlier this year out in Los Angeles. But more recent events. In fact, even after the Charlie Kirk assassination is really when we decided to pour a ton of effort into this, because we thought, even if it's the lone gunman, the crazed gunman, Tyler Robinson, there are so many people celebrating this. And we looked into the No Kings, parades or protests. But one group that we were looking at after the Kirk assassination called Armed Queers of Salt Lake City. It was reported in the New York Post that the FBI would be investigating this group. I want to be clear right now that there are no confirmed ties to Tyler Robinson or the Kirk assassination. But nonetheless, we dug into this group and found that just earlier this year, they had gone on a junket down to Havana, Cuba, funded by groups tied to Singham and to an event that Singham is totally behind down in Cuba, a Marxist revolutionary training event. It was in May. Before they scrubbed their social media, we got all the Armed Queers of Salt Lake City videos from the event. We've posted those online. And it just kind of struck us as really dark and insidious that this Shanghai-based, funder of riots, Neville Roy Singham, is also bringing American groups down to Cuba to get radicalized.
Who is this guy? I feel like, no, correct me if I'm wrong, I might be making the wrong association. There is a guy, I think it's actually Vincent Lowe, who was associated with Gavin Newsom through China SF when he was mayor. He formed some sort of relationship with billionaires from China who had connections to the CCP. And it was like, no, we're just going to engage in business together and it's going to be good for commerce. And what he ended up doing was letting them buy real estate in California, removing all of the red tape, despite the fact that fire victims can't rebuild. I still have friends from the fire in 2018 whose homes are not finished yet because of all of the red tape that has been weaponized against them. And I thought that was very strange. Who is Neville Roy Singham? Is he affiliated at all with Vincent Lowe or the CCP? Who is this guy?
Yeah, so they're separated. We could do a whole episode on Vincent Lowe, the triads, the dragon heads, this organized crime group that's tied closely to Gavin Newsom and China SF. Neville Roy Singham is different. He's more East Coast. I mean, he had a tech company, West Coast called ThoughtWorks, sold that in 2018 for nearly $1 billion. Neville Roy Singham is married to Jody Evans. She's the head of Code Pink, which is one of these entities in the protest industrial complex. Code Pink is a very radical group that you might have seen them most recently in the news when they disrupted a dinner that President Trump was at. They started yelling and getting in President Trump's face. Looked like a national security issue that these, radical people who would scream and shout at the president and his friends were able to get so close to him. They were escorted out, but that was Code Pink. Neville Roy Singham is pro-CCP. The CCP very, obviously approves of him. He's doing their bidding, essentially. We haven't been able to find dark money trails from the CCP directly to him, but he sold his company and received enough money to fund these riots for a very long time. So he's got something called the People's Forum. This is based in New York. The entire network of, a dozen NGOs that receive funding from that do all of this kind of riotous activity. He's tied actually to some radical Islamic groups like the Party for Socialism and Liberation and, PFLP actually connections, which is a borderline terrorist group. So he's not a good guy. And what he really highlights is this real kind of shocking alliance. I think everybody's starting to see it, of the pro-Hamas radical Islamic connections. By the way, Neville Roy Singham's niece, Alicia Goodwin Singham Goodwin, she's the head of Jews for Mamdani, and her parents, his sister, Neville Roy Singham's sister, are donors to the Mamdani campaign. So you've got that connection there. What we're seeing is this.
Wait, I'm so sorry. Do you mind if I pause for just 1 second? Is she Jewish?
Not that I know of, but she's the head of a...
Singham doesn't sound Jewish, but like, hey, it's 2025. Because I've been confounded. Just a sidebar, confounded by the fact that 67% of young Jewish people under the age of 45 are for Mamdani. I'm like, how, when the guy celebrates the Holy Land Five who went to jail for giving millions of dollars to a terrorist organization called Hamas? I mean, it's alarming. So this is fascinating.
These groups. And, just because they have the name Jews for Mamdani doesn't actually mean that they have a lot of Jewish support for Mamdani, but the numbers you cite are nonetheless alarming. But yeah, there's a ton of money coming from people like Singham. And so this alliance of like radical Islamic, radical Islamists mixing with Marxists and pro-CCP Marxists, and getting groups like the Armed Queers of Salt Lake City down to Cuba for Marxist revolutionary training. There's a lot of Latin American connections in this alliance of Marxism meets radical Islam meets sort of like World Economic Forum globalist connections. It's all in all un-American, anti-American groups.
Right. Okay, so this is the part that I'm struggling with, and I want to go through the different arms of it. But do these people find each other? Like, is there some sort of like evil villain meeting where that's how I'm like, how does Soros get involved with Neville Roy Singham, get involved with the Walmart heiress, get involved with, this is the Arabella network. Who the hell's that? That seems to tie back to Bill Gates in one way or another. So like, if we have this network of, let's say, evil villains, and I'm sorry, like clearly, if you're funding chaos, you're not a great person. So with that said, is this an orchestrated effort, or are they all just like, I'll throw 10 million at this group, I'll throw 50 million at that group, and it somehow coagulates? I don't understand the connection between all these people.
Yeah, I mean, there absolutely are, secret meetings where they get together. I write about them in my book, Control Oligarchs, which covers a lot of these guys. I start with, in chapter 1, the Good Club, and this was George Soros, Bill Gates, Ted Turner, even Oprah Winfrey was there, who was at the Rockefeller University in New York City in May 2009. They called themselves the Good Club. So, obviously they can't be up to anything sinister with a name like that. But they decided these guys, they're Malthusian. I mean, I don't want to throw too many curveballs at you here, but they decide that overpopulation is the number one problem facing the world. That comes from Bill Gates himself, and they all pooled their money. So that's just one of the many meetings where they all get together to talk about kind of sinister stuff. But then you've got groups like the Democratic Socialists. That's basically the political arm of, Antifa and the Mamdani types. These radical progressives. You got Justice Democrats, that's behind, AOC and some others. So there are tons of groups. They all have annual meetings. They all, not every single one of the tens of thousands or millions of the members attend, but the big dogs do attend, and they pool their money. Absolutely. Now, there's plenty of groups where they just chip in, a million here or a million there, and maybe those groups don't attend the meetings. I mean, we've documented one of the most violent riots in recent years was down in Atlanta, something called Stop Cop City, where more than 60 rioters were arrested with charges like domestic terrorism, assaulting with deadly weapons on law enforcement, arson, stuff you've seen before, kind of like the stuff out in LA with the anti-ICE.
Yeah.
But they received money from the Tide Center. They received money from the Rockefeller Network, direct money to the groups that had executives charged with domestic terrorism and RICO-like charges. So it's not a huge tangled web. Sometimes it's just direct funding.
Okay. When we look at these people, do they think, or if you had to guess, and I know that we can't be inside their head, do they think that they are fighting evil and that they're actually the Avengers? Or, okay, I would like to wish that was the case, but I don't think that's actually it. I kind of wonder if it's a globalist agenda for profit. Like you sow chaos, you control the narrative, and you get away with quite literally murder while everybody's fighting amongst themselves. So if I had to posit a theory, if we get all these people to hate each other and fight amongst themselves, we can quietly, and this is something, Peter and I have been researching and you've been helping with, we can quietly push things like glyphosate through for big ag, and nobody will know that now, big ag and big chemical have full-blown immunity. Like, am I bananas? Have I wrapped myself in tinfoil? Like, part of me wonders if this is all just a manipulation so none of us are paying attention while they get blanket immunity, while one company takes over entire industries. All of this stuff is happening, and we're fighting over deporting people who are here illegally, which has been the law of the land since the inception of our country. Or are they just good guys who are ideologically captured?
Well, it's a great question. There's a lot of layers to it. I do think they believe they're good guys. Nobody thinks that they're a villain. Whether or not their plans, and solutions will have good effects, they think they will. They think the unwashed masses, aren't smart enough to make their decisions. That would be people like Bill Gates or Klaus Schwab or George Soros. They think that we're kind of too stupid to make decisions. And so, when you're talking about the agriculture, the other kind of component to this is, yes, there's absolutely a profit motive here. Obviously, these guys are billionaires. They didn't get there by not having profit motives. So they also have just a bit of a control freak or God complex. I mean, there's some really crazy quotes from Soros talking about how he fancied himself a god, like when you can bankrupt entire countries by executing a couple of trades.
Yes.
And you might get some, messianic type feelings, which is the way he called it. He said he had some messianic fantasies. And then regarding like the glyphosates in the kind of the war on farmers, the takeover of the food supply and every other industry, really, that's about control, because control equals cash. I mean, they're monopolists. Bill Gates, especially, with Microsoft, you could see early on in the 90s, and into the 2000s, there was a lot of antitrust problems. He wanted to eliminate all the competition. That's what it looks like he's doing in the agriculture industry, because controlling the industry equals more cash for him and his investments. So regarding the glyphosates, and I don't know, I have not yet found conclusive proof that they want to create more sick people. But the outcomes sure show that. I mean, pharma is not really a cure industry; it's a treatment industry. So there's a lot of smoke there.
Seamus, I remember the letter that was circulating, supposedly signed by like 17,000 doctors against Kennedy. And I was having to do media about it. And I'm thinking, like, what is this? I'm trying to figure out what it is. I don't know how to speak in an intelligent fashion on it. Like, did 17,000 doctors really sign this thing? Am I just an idiot? And he's a threat to an existential threat to humanity? So I reached out to Callie Means, who works with the administration and works with Kennedy, and I'm like, Callie, what is this letter? And he's busy, so he just fires back, "Oh, Jill, anyone can sign it. It's nothing." And I was like, anyone can sign it? So I go to the website for the letter, right, to sign against Kennedy, and I signed it as like Dr. Doolittle. I signed it like 3 times. And I'm like, I am a toe doctor, and my name is Dr. Stinkbottom. I swear to God, Seamus. And I made a video of it, being able to sign this numerous times with no credentials, over and over and over, from the same IP address. And then I thought, like, who the heck is behind this? And it's like the Tides Foundation is one, and they're connected to the Arabella network. And I'm like, well, who the hell is that? Is some sort of forward network? And then it's all of these weird money, like dark money, astroturfing. What is astroturfing? What are these networks? That was a totally fake letter. What is behind that?
That's such a great question. Well, what it is that is manufactured consensus. It's total BS, where they're trying to make it appear that everybody agrees. You see it with climate change. You see it with, I mean, even with the 51 intelligence intelligence officers who said that the Hunter Biden laptop was fake.
Yes.
They didn't even read it. They were, those were 51 real ones, but just in the climate change arena, it's like, oh, everybody agrees, except for thousands don't, but their careers are ruined. And then I think good for you for exposing that letter with the, fake doctors, because that's as fraudulent as it gets, where you're saying this many doctors and people are just submitting not real doctors' names. But that's manufactured consensus, and is to manufacture consent so that people just say, oh, well, I guess 17,000 doctors agree. I guess I have to do this. And so that is astroturfing 101. It's pretty sophisticated, but they've been at this for a very long time. 80% of people, if everybody else is going to do it, they'll be on board with it. It's unfortunate, but that's just kind of the case. So that if they can make it seem like, and so the networks you're talking about, the powers that be, and these are really the wealthiest people in the world.
Yeah, like, who's funding this? You can't get to the bottom of it.
Say again?
So when I try to figure out, like, who is funding the Arabella network, like, it's all... Who is that? Who is the Tides Foundation? So astroturfing, just so I understand, and correct me here, I just want to clarify, is when I pretend to have consensus. That's what that means?
Yeah, that's right. It's blanketing, whether it's the airwaves or just the internet, with manufactured consensus is the best way to describe astroturfing. So who's funding Arabella? Well, of course, Bill Gates is probably the largest or second largest. George Soros. And by the way, I will say, I think President Trump had something to do with this. The Gates Foundation, it's been reported by New York Times, has ceased all funding to the Arabella network. That was in July or so. So that's $300 million that Gates Foundation has provided to the Arabella funds. Arabella, by the way, doesn't fund anything. It has a half dozen or so funds, the New Venture Fund, 1630 Fund. You got to be careful and say the funds, Gates provides money to New Venture Fund, 1630 Fund. Arabella just advises them. But that's the
Arabella
name everybody.
advisors. Right.
Yes. Yeah. So they don't actually do any funding themselves. They just advise these funds. But it's Gates, 300 million plus in the last 5 years or so. Soros, over 100 million. This Swiss billionaire, Hans-Jörg Wyss, he's a couple hundred million. And then down the list, I mean, there's, all kinds of other people like that. But those are the main ones. Mark Zuckerberg, for example, has sent a bunch of money to Arabella. Rockefeller funds Arabella. There's a number of others. But why do they fund Arabella? Why does it manufacture this consensus? Well, Bill Gates has a number of investments in the vaccines. So you want a bunch of people to be mandated to take something where 10 boosters are needed. That's going to equal a lot of money. Everybody, by the way, was begging, for the pharmaceutical companies to make these free, but they refused to do that. So, crisis equals a bunch of cash for them. Even though they got a bunch of taxpayer money to build these things, these mRNA technologies. So in any case, it's about money, in the case that you're talking about.
Right. And then what ends up happening is it gets laundered online to the mainstream media. And I'm having to comment on this on News Nation. And it's like, well, Jillian, and listen, I love News Nation. I enjoy going on there on a regular basis. But the thing is, they are going to point out, hey, just so you know, 17,000 doctors are concerned because it appears to be very real news. And that is what's insane. So, you look at these riots and these protests, and Seamus, I never paid attention to any of this. Like, how do you have abs in your 40s? That's what I was doing when all this stuff was going on, okay? Now we get to 2020, and we're pushing vaccines through emergency use loopholes, and we're silencing narratives on therapeutics, which would prevent that pathway from being open and available. And you've got the chop zone in Seattle, where a bunch of radicals have taken over downtown Seattle, shut the police department. And by the way, my favorite image from that madness was a white protester, a white guy, telling the black female police chief she needs to get out of Dodge. All with BLM flags in the background. I'm like, this is crazy. And they're calling it the summer of love. And I'm thinking, how are these guys doing this? How is nobody working? Don't they have jobs? Why does their tent all look the same? And it's been more of the same year after year after year. Same tents at the pro-Palestine. And the reality is sure, I get some of it, but it's how radical, how unhinged. These aren't peaceful protests I'm seeing. These are cities burning in many, many cases. So I'm wondering is that people believe this. And what I mean is, you could show me, and we've all seen the clips, right? That protester here she is over there in 2020, and here she is over here in 2022. All different causes, all different years. But I believe that protester believes it, despite the fact that she's being organized and she's being funded and she's being paid. She believes it. Why does she believe it? Well, because the mayor of Chicago is telling her the Gestapo's in town. Because, the governor of California is telling you they're disappearing black and brown people. And I could go on and on, right? We've seen Pritzker. They've got kids in zip ties. ICE, none of which happens to be true if you do any actual homework into it. But are the people funding the protests also the people funding these politicians' campaigns? Or is that a step too far?
Not at all. And actually, I'll give you a sneak peek at what's coming next from us, because we've done the Riot Inc. report. We've showed that the Arabella funding network, Soros, Tides, all the rest of them are funding these riots and protests. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that they have a distinctly anti-ICE character, pro-immigration character. That's not a coincidence, because these exact same funding networks have invested a ton of money into bringing 10 million plus under Joe Biden into this country illegally. And the reason that they are bringing millions upon millions of illegal migrants into this country is because they need to replace, it's two things. One, it's apportionment. If you were to remove all the illegal aliens in California, they'd lose a dozen plus congressional seats.
Yep.
So that's just fun. And that's why the same groups are funding, efforts to keep the Census Bureau from counting whether or not someone's a citizen, because they want the apportionment in these sanctuary states. Gives them a lot more power in Congress. The other reason is because they know, I mean, whether or not we're talking about getting illegal voters onto the voter rolls, which I know that that's just been a total insane conspiracy theory for so long, except for states like Texas just took 2,000 off. Virginia recently took 6,000 non-citizens off their voter rolls. So let's just place to the side non-citizens who somehow find their way onto voter rolls illegally. Within 5 years, they will become eligible to vote. And so eventually they become eligible to vote. These guys, the Soros types, the Arabella network, they are playing a very long game. And then they know that once, migrants who have been given free education, free healthcare, free, preloaded debit cards for whether it's food stamps or what have you, they're going to vote for the party that promises to continue funding that. And we're talking about like $500 billion of taxpayer money that Americans cannot afford to share with non-citizens. When huge numbers, I mean, we're pro immigration, but it has to be done in an orderly way. Otherwise, it's going to bankrupt us and really destabilize us. So it's not a coincidence that the same group funding the anti-ICE riots are the same groups funding the resettlement of millions and millions of illegal migrants, because they're the same groups that are funding the get out the vote efforts. And you mentioned Churla to begin with.
Yeah.
That is that's the perfect example, because Churla is out there anti-ICE protest rioting, but Churla is also a group that they do get out the vote outreach for not for non-citizens, although they do believe that non-citizens should be allowed to vote. Churla does migrant resettlement, the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights in Los Angeles. So they resettle migrants, they handle get out the vote activities, and they also do protest activities. It's like a threefer funded by Neville Roy Singham, and shockingly, your own tax dollars. We found that over $50 million over the years has gone from both federal government and the state of California to Churla.
I want to drill down on the state of California for a second, because it's such a perfect example of this vicious cycle you're talking about. But before I do, quick question. I've been pointing out recently that the Democrats were never for open borders. We've all now seen the videos of Barack and Hillary and Bill. We've got to close the borders. We've got to build a wall. We've got to mess with the Constitution so we can have expedited removal, get these people out of here, pretend like they were never in the country. That was created by Clinton and then expanded by Obama. What happened with the Democrats that they suddenly, under Biden, felt like we can't win elections anymore the right way? We got to game the apportionment map for electoral college votes and the House of Representatives. What happened there? They were winning just fine for quite some time.
Yeah, well, I think I can't be certain, but I think that they've been kind of hemorrhaging support in recent years. I mean, Barack Obama was sort of a shining star, and a lot of people on both sides voted for him. He had the highest, until Joe Biden in 2020, highest number of votes ever. And so, Barack Obama was kind of the last person that people truly supported. But then he came in and put this kind of socialist vision in place, and Democrats started to lose support. And it tracks it with their increase because Barack Obama deported as many or more people than President Trump is doing now.
4 million people? Trump said 1.7. It's going to be real hard for him to catch up. I mean, more.
And I think a part of this is President Trump made immigration his core issue both in 2016 and in 2020. And so reflexively, the left has said just gone to extreme lengths just to say that they oppose Donald Trump, so much so that we'll let in, 10 million people in 4 years. It's kind of a crazy amount. I mean, just the Democrats would never have gone for 10 million people in 4 years and $500 billion in the amount of money spent on benefits and housing and, all other forms of assistance.
I am not a person who I am so sympathetic to the cause of economic migrants and refugees. Okay, so much so that I purposely adopted a child from another country because I knew what a gift I had to give citizenship. I was like, I have this golden ticket and I'm going to use it. I have the means to use this, and I can give this child everything it needs. Right at the time, I didn't know it was going to be a boy or a girl. Now her, everything she needs to become a flourishing member of society. And we've seen immigrants do this historically. One of the examples I'm loving right now is Winsome Earl Sears, who, this is going to air on Wednesday. She just ran for, the election was yesterday. But that's what happens when you come in the right way. This is a Jamaican immigrant who was a Marine, a small business owner, lieutenant governor, ran for governor of Virginia. I hope to God you and I are saying this right now, and I hope she's won. But regardless, look at what a contribution she's made to our country. Like, I get it. I'm for it, right? I not only that, I volunteered for the United Nations Refugee Agency to try to raise awareness of what refugees go through. I was over at a refugee camp in South Sudan. I get it. But what the Democrats have unleashed is, as you said, it's destroying our infrastructure. It's creating racism due to all of the resentment for people who did it the right way, all of the people that are citizens that can't eat, can't afford healthcare, can't get a home loan. And then you see the guy that just showed up illegally getting your tax dollars just to get the things you actually don't have access to. It's making them racist. It's making them hateful. It's making them anti-immigrant. It is gaming our democracy, which people like me are super freaked out about if you had the luxury to pay attention to it, because it's like, wait a second, what's going on with your ideas that you can't win with the people here legally? That's really friggin' scary. And so I just want to point out those distinctions, because they love to, when you raise the alarm bell here, it's like, you're just a racist, just a white nationalist. It's like, no, dude, stop. And that is more of that media narrative, which, before we move on to California, we talked about the bullshit that these politicians are putting into the world to create more of this chaos and get those protesters to not just get paid, but really buy in, really radicalize them. But it's also the left-wing media. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen Don Lemon just told people, this is my favorite, to go get a gun, people of color, to go get a gun to protect themselves from ICE.
If you believe in the Second Amendment, if you believe in the Constitution, Black people, brown people of all stripes, whether you're an Indian American or a Mexican American or whoever you are, go out in your place where you live and get a gun legally, get a license to carry legally. Because when you have people knocking on your door and taking you away without due process as a citizen, isn't that what the Second Amendment was written for?
Like, we've seen the Joy Reids and like we've seen all of this coming out of the left-wing media. Is any of that being funded by the Soroses and the Bill Gates, or is any of that money flowing into these media institutions?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's funny. A lot of people don't know this. I reported this in that book I mentioned, that MSNBC is the MS stands for Microsoft, and the NBC is a Rockefeller. I mean, NBC goes way back even before the radio, but 30 Rock is Rockefeller Plaza. NBC is a Rockefeller creation. So it really was like a merger between Bill Gates's empire and the Rockefeller empire. It doesn't, it happens to be the most radical of the mainstream cable networks. Same thing with the rest of them. They have a lot of big money in them. I wouldn't say that their programming is just like dictated by the Gates types or whatever. I mean, Ted Turner, I mentioned, was at this the Good Club meeting of the Good Club in May 2009, convened by Bill Gates. Turner's not in charge of CNN anymore, but he was the founder. So there is a whole chapter in the book on mainstream mind control and all the money behind the corporate press. But yeah, I mean, I think Don Lemon, he's not extremely bright, but he's also, I think he is a true believer. It is dangerous rhetoric, though. And it's the same thing behind kind of the armed queers of Salt Lake City that I mentioned a little while ago, where it's like you arm up and it's like you give people who are maybe not in the best headspace, guns. We're pro Second Amendment here, but you give people, like, tell them to arm up, and then you gin up a bunch of fear, some of it irrational. And if ICE has not been going after children and people who are just trying to work their jobs, they've been going after dangerous and violent criminals. And so I guess if you're saying someone telling a dangerous and violent criminal, if you're Don Lemon, telling them to arm up and fight back or something, yeah, that is extremely reckless, especially in the post Charlie Kirk shooting era. It's like we're seeing, I mean, at the No Kings recently, the number of people mocking, pantomiming. You had the Chicago teacher pantomiming Charlie Kirk's assassination. Seeing lots of Halloween costumes, gruesome stuff. You need to tone it down. I mean, to say the least, Don Lemon.
I remember when Joy Reid was on MSNBC, and I'll never forget it because there's a member of my family who's exceptionally liberal. And Joy Reid said that if you don't want open borders, or if you take umbrage with, the massive influx of immigrants, you're a white nationalist. And that was the day that this family member stopped watching MSNBC. And she was like, this is insane. Like, I'm not going to be called a white nationalist because I think open borders are unsafe. But I thought, that's obviously a lie. There are very real concerns about open borders. Where fentanyl is flowing over. We lost 250,000 kids because of that. Like, for you to say that, I know you know better, Joy Reid. You went to Harvard. I know you're not dumb. Captured? Yes. Pissed and angry? Yes. Hate white people? Seems like it. But I know you know better. So what in the hell? Who told her to say that? That's the part, right? And then all of a sudden, you watch those Joy Reids, and it's the white nationalists that are out there in the streets that want the immigrants to go home. And now you're out there and you're going after the Gestapo, and it's like, it's everything you said. We ginned them up, we brainwashed them, we propagandized them, and then we weaponized it. Here's your cinder block, here's your gas mask, here's your, bus ticket in and out, here's your bail money. It is diabolical. Which brings me back to California. Gavin Newsom, Churla, the immigrants' rights group we talked about, he gave these guys our tax dollars. Millions. And then they donated back to him for his gubernatorial campaign where he was being recalled. Millions. How is this legal? Explain this currency for me. I don't get this.
Well, Jillian, that's the name of the game. I mean, that is how politics works, and on both sides, really, but especially you see it on the left. I mean, it's just kind of one big laundromat recycling. I mean, just looking at the Soros, Arabella, Tides network funding, it's the weirdest thing. I mean, Soros gives 10 million to some Arabella fund. That Arabella fund gives 10 million to Tides. Tides gives it to Soros, and around it goes. And then it trickles down, of course, to the groups like Churla, and then back up to the politicians like Gavin, who push the money. We actually reported on this, and we did a big investigation on the gold bars off the Titanic. I don't know if you remember that story.
No, tell me.
Okay, so there was at the EPA in the waning weeks of the Biden administration, according to, when Project Veritas got this on video, one of the people inside EPA in December 2024 says, man, we are just, it's like we're dumping gold bars off the Titanic. We're shoveling as much cash out of EPA as humanly possible before Donald Trump takes office. And so we looked into that, and $20 billion left the EPA from the Biden administration into mostly progressive groups, including some Arabella. The Windward Fund was a partner. Stacey Abrams was part of one of these groups, Power Forward Communities. Rockefeller connections, et cetera. I mean, big names. And what we really kind of saw here on this one example, now we actually expanded it to other agencies, found it was over $100 billion after Donald Trump was elected, before he was inaugurated, the Biden administration officials gave to political cronies and connected entities. $100 billion. That is so much, get out the vote money and riot money, et cetera. But anyway, what we the theory we developed, and we think it's true, and they've been up to it for a while, is how they use your and my money as a force multiplier for their agenda. And it's mostly the left that does this. I mean, the right, they've got their, put maybe war machine or defense contracting scheme going on. But on the left, it's like the money, your and my taxpayer money, finds its way through grants and contracts and forgiven loans to big funding networks like Arabella, Tides, or even smaller ones like Churla. And then that money is pooled with private money, but really it's only like, in some cases, like 10% private money, 90% government money. And then they go and use our money to wage war on, let's say, middle America. They use, climate change as a way to wage war on farmers, or, just pushing all kinds of policies that most Americans, if they knew their tax dollars were going towards it, they would be outraged, and they should be outraged.
I am keenly aware of it in California because I have lived it. So the thing is, like, when you lose your house to a fire in 2018, and then like, oh, hold on, this is because PG&E didn't update their infrastructure. Why didn't they update their infrastructure? Oh, because Gavin Newsom didn't make them because they gave him a bunch of money. And you start to kind of look into, why can't I rebuild? Wait, who's getting a hold of the land? And all of a sudden, the land reclaiming thing starts to happen, and it's no longer just a conspiracy theory. And you've got foreign governments now buying up the Pacific Palisades, and these huge corporations building low-income housing on Ocean Avenue, and only a small fraction has to be actually low-income housing, and only for a certain number of years. And it's basically like, we are grabbing the most valuable land in America right now. And we're making it impossible for everyday people who lost their home to ride this one out. They can't afford it. They can't afford another house. Their insurance didn't cover it. Suddenly, randomly, the insurance companies all pulled out 3 months before Palisades got wiped out. I mean, it's so filthy dirty that I didn't really have a choice but to try to explore it in California. So I'm uniquely familiar when it comes to Gavin Newsom. And this is one of the reasons I'm so terrified about him becoming president, because I've seen who this man is and what he has done to California. It has nothing to do with him being a Democrat. I think he's a sociopath. I mean it. So given that, right? Talk to me a little bit about this whole triad you mentioned of Vincent Lowe and the CCP. Because I do understand a little bit of this connection with Newsom. And obviously he's reflective of politicians across the country. So I'd like to use him as a case study. Why is this guy allowing China to buy land here in California when there was a bill that allowed him to block it? He vetoed it. Why is he clearing all the red tape for them to be able to build? Why is this allowed when Eric Adams got indicted for taking plane tickets from Turkish Airlines? And he's nothing. He's running for president in 2028.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've seen the book Fool's Gold. It was written by my colleague, Jed McFadder, and the great investigative reporter, Susan Crabtree. I'll get you a copy. It's a phenomenal book where our whole research team, the Schweizer team, spent a long time looking into Gavin Newsom's China ties and going back even further. So for those who don't know, he was mentored before he became mayor of San Francisco by another mayor of San Francisco, the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. She goes way back. They flung open the Golden Gates to China back in the 80s in San Francisco. And Dianne Feinstein's husband, Richard Blum, he has so many dealings with China. But that's really who Gavin learned from, is that you can make a lot of money doing business with the Chinese and looking the other way when they have their organized crime member, these triad groups operating in American, on American soil, which is just crazy. They should be gone. He's got a couple of people he's done business with. So you mentioned Vincent Lowe. He's a Hong Kong businessman. Okay. He's got this real estate group called the Shui On Group. Gavin Newsom actually had a wine tasting over in Shanghai, where now people know that Gavin Newsom has these vineyards. Mm-hmm. We have found exports to China. His bottles are priced higher than they're probably worth. But he's got a couple of businesses that we know do business with the Chinese. Now, he's been favorable ever since, he celebrated his mayoral victory, I think 2005, maybe, in San Francisco. He celebrated in Chinatown. And he's had connections ever since. He's done, like I said, the wine tasting in Shanghai. And then he does this partnership program called China SF. And
Right.
through China SF, it's a partnership between China and San Francisco, obviously. They have tried to scrub it. They renamed it Global SF. But so many spies, intellectual property thieves, pro-CCP. I mean, Huawei was one of the initial funders, which we now know is a total CCP espionage operation. That was one of the core founding members of China SF, which was Gavin Newsom's brainchild. You had SunTech or something like that, which was a solar company, took a bunch of money, went bankrupt. So you had a bunch of scamming, thieving, espionage going on. All roads lead to Gavin Newsom.
Seamus. I want to say this. I want to say this one more time. This is not a chicken and an egg conversation for me. And what I mean by that is I'm not going after Gavin Newsom because I've leaned more right. I've leaned more right because of Gavin Newsom. So having said that, my bias against him is created by him, not by me being partisan to the right. How has he not been indicted for this? I don't get it. How is this legal? And we all famously saw it. Just a quick sidebar in case you're like, nah, we all famously saw the streets of San Francisco become spotless. When Chinese leadership came into town, and then the minute they were gone, it was a catastrophe all over again. Like, how is this guy not indicted for this? How is this not on the cover of every freaking newspaper? How is he getting away with this? Is this legal?
It's a great question. I mean, doing business. He is, by the way, hired at least 20 people. I mean, I forget the total number. We found like 25, maybe, people who were either previously criminals or became, had been committing crimes and then were later arrested after he hired them. He's received money from a couple dozen felons and people who, he had to return the donations later, some of which he returned, some of which he didn't. There's absolutely criminality going on all throughout California, especially throughout the halls of power in San Francisco and at the governorship level. It is illegal. Here's the thing. I mean, if the left would have no problem, as we saw with President Trump, the people closest to him, making up charges. The right does not go after their political opponents. I think they're, maybe afraid of being called hypocrites or weaponizing the government. But that's kind of the problem is if you look the other way or you're afraid of prosecuting real crime, then people lose faith in the government. So I'm not sure
a good point because
doesn't get investigated, but they usually don't.
Because Trump has obviously gone after the handful of Comey and all of that. And I haven't loved it. And while I appreciate that he's like, but what they did to me, and it is dirty. It's filthy dirty. Russia. I bought it. Now, it was all fake, all orchestrated. I understand why he's suing the DOJ. And he started it before he took office. But I certainly wish he'd be like, you know what? I'm going to take $1. It's symbolic because it's dirty. The optics are bad. It doesn't look good. This is the part where I just kind of like for the greater good of the country. Like, come on. Like it just, look, they're going to use this against you. They're going to radicalize more people in the streets who don't really, which kind of does bring me back to maybe why we don't go after Gavin Newsom when he is, you're right. I can see it when he's the front runner for the left. Clearly.
Yeah, there's been a handshake for so long, and that's why people say swamp, and it's why they say uniparty. And maybe it's better for the country that way, that you don't go after each other for process crimes, and you don't go after each other for even foreign influence. I mean, even like before Paul Manafort in 2016, the Foreign Agents Registration Act was abused. I mean, now everybody violated it. Nobody was disclosing to the extent that you're supposed to disclose their work on behalf of foreign governments, including China, including Russia, including enemies. And it was never prosecuted. Decades, it was never prosecuted. Then they prosecuted Paul Manafort. And you know what happened after that? The FARA filings and the disclosures skyrocketed. Everybody started following the rules again and doing the right thing. Now, I mean, the Podesta group, who had been lobbying for the same clients as Paul Manafort, they were allowed to retroactively file their disclosures, totally got away with what sent Paul Manafort to Rikers, but they had both broken the law. It should be applied evenly. But for so long, there's been this kind of handshake where, and Donald Trump tried to do it. You know, after he won, he'd run essentially on lock her up for Hillary Clinton. He took the high road. He said, I don't think it would be good for the country, even though we've documented. I mean, Peter Schweizer wrote the book, Clinton Cash, hundreds of millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation from foreign governments who had business before the Secretary of State. I mean, we documented the most expansive off the books lobbying and pay to play operation probably in our history.
CGI.
But Donald Trump took the high road. He did not punish her. He did not lock her up. It upset a lot of his base. And then they kind of repaid him by spying, continuing to spy on him, prosecuting everyone close to him on sometimes missing commas and dotted I's and stuff. And so I agree with you that it does look like he's going on a bit of a vengeance tour with Letitia James and the rest of them. I mean, I will say that we published exclusive documents on Adam Schiff's mortgage declarations that he did check. I mean, it's a pretty case closed, like open shut. He checked primary residence both in Burbank and in Maryland within the same year. You're not supposed to do that. So that's what, the mortgage fraud thing is about. I mean, John Bolton, I get the appearance.
The appearance is brutal, Seamus, which is why I'm just like, oh, please just don't. Just go give us peace in the Middle East. Get some awesome trade deal done with Xi Jinping. Shut the border so fentanyl's not pouring over. But Trump doesn't give a shit. And I wish sometimes I'm like, oh God, just for the fabric of society. Because the problem for me is now you've got a radical in the streets who's like, see what he's doing? He's locking up his political opponents. And they don't really care if Trump had a reason to go after the DOJ and sue them or not. And they're like, oh my God, he's giving himself $230 million. The optics are freaking terrible. And I just, I like the whole, I prefer that we don't go after political opponents. I wouldn't mind them being removed. Like, you break these laws, you violated ethics, you're gone. You lose your license to practice law. You lose your license to practice medicine. You lose your ability to be a politician in government. Like something like that. But when it starts to become tit for tat, because everybody did something, I worry that it gets weaponized by the very people you and I are talking about.
No, I think you're right. I mean, we're kind of like, we're on this ladder of escalation. I don't know where it's going to end, but it's not good. You're exactly right that this tit for tat is going to, is this just going to become a thing that you use your intelligence agencies to spy on your political opponents in the campaign? You try to weaponize information against them to ruin their campaign. You try to prosecute their campaign people. And then if they win somehow against all odds, they get in and then they go and, try to invest. Nothing will get done because they'll be so busy trying to get vengeance on one another. So it's not a good situation.
I see it. I guess looking at all of this, what I kind of hope people take away, or what I certainly hope they take away, is that they are being manipulated. They're being manipulated with narratives and propaganda in all forms of media, including new media. New media has become shockingly radicalized. I'm like, okay, I'm leaning into Hannity. News. I'm like Leland Vitters and Sean Hannity. I love my Megyn Kelly. But when you start to get like crazy conspiracy theories for clicks, and I'm wondering, you're finding, by the way, and I love Dave Rubin. I think he's awesome, but he unwittingly ended up taking money. I can't remember from who the hell, and Tim Pool both had money
Russia.
flow. Russia, and they didn't even know.
Media.
They did not even know it. And I happen to like both of them a friggin' ton and think they're awesome. But like they didn't even know the freaking money came in. So it's kind of like these animals leave no stone unturned. Nobody knows what to trust anymore. But at the same time, I want people to not really trust these things and to do their own homework. What is the takeaway? Honestly, like you expose all this stuff. This is what you do. And again, all transparency, you guys are helping me expose next year some horrifying realities when it comes to our food system, healthcare, insurance. It is some dark shit. Like as I rework the intro of this book, I'm like, they're gonna think we've lost the fucking plot. It's so dark and it's so crazy, but it's so true. Like, what are we hoping people do with this information? I can't be like, don't forget to count your calories. Yeah. Like, what do we, whether it's your health or it's your politics or whatever, you're giving them the information, hopefully, so they know they're being manipulated. But how do they get to the truth? What are they supposed to do with this information?
Well, it's a great question. It's a tough one because, and I think you're a shining example. I mean, most people just want to be left alone from politics. They don't want to get into politics. They just want to live their lives. I think more and more people are realizing that politics comes for them, and these, insidious schemes, whether from the agriculture or the food or the pharmaceutical industry, they're not going to leave you alone. And so you kind of have to expose it. And so I really applaud you for jumping in really with both feet into exposing corruption. And what everybody could do is buy the next Jillian Michaels book.
You're kind of say. I mean, I love you for that. It's interesting
and share it. If or not buy, but we put out information all the time. You got to share it. You got to share the information. The first step is kind of becoming aware of what's going on, because so many things that like people have said were conspiracy theories for so long, and I would have said years ago that like a vaccine passport or something was a conspiracy theory. I think COVID was a turning point for most people. People's eyes have opened up in the last 5 years and are really just hungry for good quality research and information.
And I hope they use it. I got to tell you, Seamus, I noticed, and this is going to sound insane, and I'm happy to take responsibility for who I am as a person, what I've done in the past, but I've noticed that as word about this book started to get out, all of a sudden I got a documentary on Netflix about a television show that I left 11 years ago that's a hit piece only on me. I was like, that's weird, and filled with a bunch of lies. I'm like, that's a little strange. And then, you go on CNN and I'm like, hold on a second. Like, you can't just make every exhibit in the Smithsonian like about how white imperialism has destroyed the world. Like the facts actually, or not all white people are bad. There's really good reason. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, she's a crazy white nationalist, racist. I'm like, that's bizarre. Like the most insane pejoratives. And then it's like somebody that I dated when I was 21 years old. And I haven't spoken to this person in, 16, 17 years. Literally dated when I was 21. And knew throughout my 20s, tried to have a friendship with, gave a podcast 6 years ago. And was like, Jill spits on people. And I'm trying to remember, she tried to kidnap me in her Lamborghini. I've never owned a Lamborghini. I notoriously drive pickup trucks, right? Never owned a Lamborghini. And I gave the Us Weeklies, the E! News. I'm like, this isn't true. I've never owned a Lamborghini. There's no video of me spitting on anyone. And the last time I ever heard from this person was actually in 2014, telling me she was sober and making amends, and provided them with they left all that out and printed it anyway. And I can't help but think it's weird that all of this happens and is orchestrated in the mainstream years later. And maybe I'm paranoid. People love to hate me. I'm a very polarizing, controversial figure. There is no question. But it's just odd that it all happens at the same time right around the time that it's like everyone does know we're poking around. I'll leave it at that, like into really deep and dark places like you're talking about. So, do you fear, honestly, I'm asking you honestly, do you fear for your well-being? Honestly.
No, I do not.
You don't? Okay.
Don't you can't let fear. I mean, we hired armed security
Okay.
back in the Clinton investigation. We've since done ones into even scarier people like the CCB and the triads and stuff. You can't live in fear. So whether or not we should be is a different question, but I don't live in fear.
One more thing.
And neither should you, but it's not, by the way, it's not a coincidence, Jillian, that as you become, well, first of all, you're everywhere and you're telling the truth. And a lot of people don't like the truth being told. So, it's probably the hate's going to keep coming the more truth you tell.
Just so weird. It's like, I left that show 11 years ago and you like dug it up and spun it, manipulated it and targeted it right at me on Netflix. Talk about like mainstreaming insanity. But one last thing, Seamus, and I should have asked you this when you brought it up the first time, and I meant to. Clinton Global Initiative. I've had some firsthand experience with this, and it was all really bizarre to me. So here's what I'm talking about. I adopt a kid from Haiti, and I'm thinking, like, I want my daughter to look back and feel like I honored her heritage. And I thought, what can we do? What can we give the country? Like that she can be proud of. And so I was working with an adoption agency, and I think this policy came out of, or this program came out of Rwanda. I can't remember because this is now 13 years ago. And basically what it was a database that tracks NGOs in the country, that makes them say what they're doing, pay to be over there to the government, so it pays for itself. In this way, a kid in Jacmel, Haiti doesn't get 3 vaccinations, but the kid in Port-au-Prince, listen, this is who knows at this point, but the kid in Port-au-Prince gets none, right? Or you're looking, you need dentistry and you got 5 dentists in Cap-Haitian and no dentists in Jeremy. In other words, like, how can we provide these resources? How do we make these people accountable? How do we spread them out throughout the country? How do we have a database so Haitians can find the help? And all I needed to do, I said I'd fund the entire thing, right? And at the time, President Martelly was in charge of Haiti. So I joined the Clinton Global Initiative, and they have something called the Haiti Action Network. And it's like Sean Penn and Maria Bella, something like that. And an Irish billionaire who's intelligent.
Dennis O'Brien.
Bingo! That's the guy.
Yes.
So
Digicel and all the rest, yes.
So I'm like, guys, I created this whole thing, and I built it out, and here's a demo. I'm going to pay for it and everything. I just need President Martelly to sign off so I can move it through what was called IBESR, which was like their social services program. I mean, they're all homies with Martelly, and this should be the snap of it. And they're like, we want to see this. We want to see this thing that you've built. Show us. And I never heard from these people again. That thing was dead and buried. It was like, oh, we got to kill that. And I thought, that is creepy as hell. Like, what are you guys, lords of poverty? And then I came to find out that they didn't believe in international adoption. And it's like, well, why wouldn't you believe in international adoption? What's going on with these NGOs? And like, oh, we want to keep kids in their culture. And I'm like, well, my kid, the children are being sold over the border. Their organs are being harvested. They're dying of cholera. Like, there's nothing safe. There's no life here in this particular place. But you want to prevent. And the only reason I could still adopt from Haiti is because they hadn't ratified the Hague Convention, which the NGOs were going in, getting these countries to ratify the Hague Convention and then utilizing it to close international adoption. So they would say, we'll give you all this aid, ratify the Hague Convention to show us you'll be above board. Oh, hold on. You don't have the infrastructure to actually be Hague compliant. International adoption's closed. What does that bring? It brings money into the country. It brings visibility to what's going on. Like, they shut that shit down. Any attempt to try to make Haiti independent on their own or make these NGOs accountable in seconds. And then I came to find out that Hillary Clinton gave all the earthquake money through her role as Secretary of State to Dennis O'Brien. And nothing got rebuilt, Seamus. nothing. Where's the money? Haiti is in complete shambles. Nothing got fixed. Things only got worse. Where is that money?
It's grotesque and it's tragic. Really, Haiti was probably the most plundered, and just total corruption on our side, the American government, because of Hillary Clinton, the Clinton Foundation. It's just a disaster, and it actually goes back even further than the earthquake. I mean, there's a great 60 Minutes special where you've got George Soros and Hillary and Bill Clinton walking around. I think it's 1993, just kind of pricing out the sections and how do we, plunder Haiti 30 years ago. And so it's tragic that these kind of vultures have went there and wasted all of the aid money. Where did the money go? It went to, there's a number of donors to the Clinton Foundation that got the contracts. Of course, Dennis O'Brien, one of them. Yeah. Marriott, I believe the only hotel that was allowed to be built there was a Marriott hotel. That was a big Clinton donor. And that was where all the businessmen who were carving up various areas of Haiti to get the contracts, the funding, the so-called aid money was actually used for Western firms to go set up shop. So there was the Caracol port in Haiti set up this SAE-A, SAE-A, SAE-A manufacturing, textile plant. That would be, I think they served Walmart and Target. So it was, all of the money went to building, the things that would help people in the wealthy people in the United States. Not much of it went to Haiti, obviously, as we're seeing today. So it's a crime. I mean, really, what happened in Haiti is a crime. It's an ongoing crime. And I'd be fascinated to kind of look into that situation. It doesn't shock me that somebody who actually wanted to do good, such as yourself, with a good idea for Haiti, was turned down by these gatekeepers, tied to the Clintons. I'd be interested to look at it. You're kind of bringing up something I haven't looked at in 10 years, but it's just.
I'll never forget it. It was so filthy. For the first time in my life, I really understood what the term lords of poverty meant. And as I spent a very long time trying to adopt a child from the developing world as stated, so I could give them the opportunity that America will provide them with this golden ticket that you have as a citizen, I continued to find they shut down international adoption here. UNICEF shut down. They shut down and I'm thinking, why is the United Nations agency shutting down international adoption? Why would you do that? I totally get that you have to go through background checks and physicals and oh my God, shame it. The FBI looks into you and the State Department, understandably so. So you're not trafficking kids, but they shut it down on purpose. And Haiti was I barely got my kid out of there. Barely. They were just about to sign The Hague. Barely got her out of there. And I don't know, man. It's so filthy dirty and I'll never forget it. And I all of a sudden looked at CGI and I was like, what is this? What the hell is this place?
There was some dark stuff. I mean, we kind of stuck to following the money, but I mean, the Laura Silsby case and Monica Peterson, I didn't really go deep down those roads. I don't know if you have, but
no.
There was definitely a lot of trafficking going out of Haiti, and someone who's good, who's not doing that, it really puts in stark contrast. I mean, I know the woman was arrested and then Hillary Clinton, it was reported, we never verified, personally made a call to get her out of jail when she had 30 orphans trying to leave into, I think, Dominican Republic or whatever it was. But anyway, a lot of bad stuff in Haiti.
Wow. All right. Well, Seamus, what books should they read? Where can they get more of your work? Tell everybody everything about you, your work, your organization, and where they can get more, because we certainly need it.
Thank you so much for having me, Jillian. This is so much fun. I'm on. We're kind of sickos like that. I mean, people are I found something awesome, and it's some terrible thing, and it's not awesome. It's terrible stuff we're talking about. But it does take kind of a bit of a weirdo to want to spend their life investigating corruption. People are don't you get depressed? It's no, bringing light to the darkness, it brings me joy. So anyway, I'm on all platforms at Seamus Bruner. It's SEAMUS, mostly on Twitter. But I've got Instagram and the rest. Peter Schweizer, same deal. He's at Peter Schweizer on all platforms. We publish our investigations on thedrilldown.com. That's where Peter's podcast is housed. And then, my most recent book, Control Oligarchs, is probably the most relevant. You can get that anywhere. It's the word control plus oligarchs. And it talks about, the Arabella and Tides people, Soros types, and what they're up to.
Thank you so much, Seamus.